bill. Madam Speaker, we should embrace this process to make a positive impact on the Senate bill. I urge my colleagues to oppose the motion to instruct, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from West Virginia.
I continue to reserve my time.
Continues to reserve. The gentleman from Florida. Gentleman from Florida.
Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to yield to one of the senior members of the Transportation Committee, the gentleman from California, Mr. Miller, 3 minutes.
Gentleman from California, recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's interesting about the debate is if the Senate bill is good, you're going to appoint conferees. Argue for the Senate side. You don't have to introduce a bill here on the House and expect us to accept it when we haven't read it. We haven't debated it. It came to the floor without any discussion on our side. So when we go to conference, if you like the Senate provisions, if you like a 2-year bill, well, we're going to fight for a 5-year bill, you're welcome to ask for that. But there's some things in the Senate bill that really bother me. You had the Senate side say and guarantee there were no earmarks in this bill. Well, if you look at what Senator Reid done, in 2005, Safety Lou, the House put out a $45 million request for a project that was considered a legal earmark at that point in time. What Mr. Reid has done is he has reappropriated that project to a $45 million project near the Las Vegas airport. Now, it's nice that the Senate wants to make promises, but actions speak a lot louder than words, and when the actions of the bill state clearly that $45 million of House money authorized in 2005 is being transferred to a project in Las Vegas in a bill and it's 2012, something inappropriate about that promise seems to occur. And I really appreciate the Chairman putting language in our original bill on environmental streamlining, and I think he did a great job on there. But when I wrote the bill, the language, it was very clear on what we were trying to do. In 2005, I authored language in TLU that said, if a state has an environmental process that meets or exceeds federal law on the environmental law, then they don't have to go through a duplicative process. And it allowed 5 states the opportunity to participate in that. But one state took advantage of that, as the state of California. To this date, it's saving 17 months on process time, just application. It's saving 30 months on delivery time. What we tried to do in the House bill was the same thing. We're saying allow environmental reciprocity, but we want to go beyond that. We want to say not only should states be allowed to do that, but allow local municipalities and counties to do the same thing. They can save 17 months on process, 30 months on delivery. Today, time equals dollars. Plus, if you can create the projects today, we're going to move the economy forward in a positive direction and create some jobs. But there's other things we need to do. Receiving grants. Current law says that if a state or municipality applies for a federal grant, they can't start the project until the grant money is received by the municipality or the agency. What we've done is say, once you have been approved for the grant, if you want to start the project now, start the project. And you can reimburse yourself when the grant funds come in. You might save 12 months alone waiting for a grant to come in from the federal government, whereby you can start the project today using local agency funds or state funds and get your money back when this money comes in from the grant project. We need to establish some certainty on when you can start a project. The problem we have is when applications made to the federal government for a process for approval, it goes through an uncertain time process where they can delay and delay and delay. We've said, thanks to the Chairman, that there's a date certain. Now, the federal government has to respond by a date and has to approve it by a date.
30 additional seconds.
Gentleman
Thank
recognized.
you, Mr. Chairman. And I think Chairman Mica did a great job putting the language into the bill because it says you have to know when you can do something based on the federal process, and it says a deadline for the federal bureaucrats to get their job done. Now, it seems like local government and state government are rapidly wanting to do things, and the federal government drags their heels, requiring them to delay till they get final approval. We're saying no. Let's set a date for the federal bureaucracy to approve a project, and I know you agree with this issue on your side, to let the construction projects go forward and make sure bureaucrats do their job. I approve what Chairman Mica is willing to do and wants to do here, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from West Virginia.
I continue to reserve the balance of my time.
Continues to reserve. The gentleman from Florida.
Madam Speaker, at this time I have no additional speakers, and I believe the gentleman on the minority side would have the right to close.
That is
that correct? So what I'll do is then I will yield myself the balance of the time of our time,
Gentleman's
and then
recognized.
allow him to conclude.
Gentleman's recognized.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and my colleagues started out, talking about how it's important for the legislative process to properly be fulfilled under the terms of the Constitution and separation of responsibilities in the legislative body. This motion, of course, would close all of that down. We'd accept what the Senate has done without all of the work many members have put into this, including visits. Now, I didn't go to Webster Springs, but I did go to Beckley, West Virginia, where we held the first meeting to allow the other side of the aisle to present at the very first of these deliberations their viewpoint and their recommendations for trying to pass a long-term transportation bill. And we took many of those, as you heard, 60% of the recommendations from the other side. We took 100 amendments, considered them, passed 20 during 18 hours of marking up and considering the bill. So we've tried to make this a bipartisan process and a full process that everyone gets to participate. But now they're here telling us that we don't want the House to participate any further. That would just take the Senate bill and go along. Now, they, of course, passed 6 extensions, short-term, keeping things in turmoil during, I think we calculated, about 14 months. I've had to do 3 in about the same period of time. The difference is I didn't have 6,300 earmarks. I didn't control the other body or the that house downtown. What do they call that? The White House. But they've controlled them all the branches, and they couldn't get her done. So the Senate bill does not set a threshold on some of these environmental approvals that tie us up, and no one wants to step over any environmental good provisions. What we want to do is shorten a little bit the time that these things go under consideration. They go on and on. You heard Mr. Ribble talk 15 years to approve some of the projects in his district, 7 years on average for simple processing if the federal government gets involved. And we keep repeating the same thing. You heard the Speaker say it's like Groundhog Day around here, and we got to stop the Groundhog Day. And we can do that by having the House provisions adopted. There are a whole host of things wrong with the Senate bill, and I won't get into them, and I know it's been a bumpy road to get here. I've told folks that when I became chairman, and I think the ranking member, when he became ranking member, neither of us was handed an operating manual. So this has been a bumpy road to get here, and it is a difficult process, but we've tried to include everyone in that process and come up with the best suggestions, recommendations. Mr. Ribble's amendment, which is the streamlining provisions of H.R. 7, excellent. We'll get more for less, and we can do it responsibly. Mr. Basante's amendment from Louisiana, getting the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund to get funds that are collected for improvement of the ports, actually to improve our ports that are so important to infrastructure. So there are many good provisions in our legislation. It's not what I would have exactly crafted or passed in the very beginning or brought out here, but it is a vehicle so that everybody can have consideration who's participated in this process. So I submit to you, although it's been a bumpy road with some twists and turns we didn't expect, the Senate bill is a path to fewer jobs. It's a path to fewer projects actually getting done. It's a path to build only paths, if you want to look at it that way. And unfortunately, it's also a path to dead end for transportation. So I submit, Madam Speaker, that we take a different road, that we take a road to where we'll have more jobs, we can do more with less, and we can, I think, do a lot more for the American people at a very difficult time in our history and moving this great country forward and building our infrastructure. And with that, I'll yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Florida yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from West Virginia.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself the balance of my time.
The gentleman's recognized.
Madam Speaker, as I said in my opening comments, the Senate bill, MAP 21, is not the perfect bill. It's not the bill I would have written had I had my druthers. And yet I hear several my colleagues on the other side saying how stunned they are that I am not for the House bill and that I would be here offering a motion to accept carte blanche the other body's bill. I'm sure those members know how this process works, but before I just give them a brief lesson on that, let me say, repeat my words again from my opening comments, that the other body's bill is not perfect. If there are issues that we must change, we can address those through a technical corrections bill that will make the necessary policy changes to improve the bill. This is not unprecedented. We have done it before, I would say to my stunned colleagues on the other side of the aisle. So there is nothing to prevent Congress from enacting S. 1813 and then continuing to work to develop further bicameral, bipartisan changes to further improve our surface transportation programs and policies. But the bottom line here is that our American workers should not have to wait any longer as Congress searches for an agreement. The time for political games, the time for adding stuff to score political points is over. I would say, in addition to my distinguished chairman from Florida, he appears to blame part of his problems and headaches and troubles on his side of the aisle to the fact that we no longer have what are known as earmarks. Now, it seems to me he's suggesting that we reinstate that process known as earmarks, whereby we in this body, if it's so concerned about members of the House having a say and doing our constitutional jobs, where we would have a legitimate input into the making of transportation policy by deciding those local projects that are best for our people rather than leaving them to bureaucracies or to presidents of the United States, regardless of who occupies that office. So last week I asked my colleague to join me in a bipartisan manner in writing a letter, which he kindly agreed, to the Speaker urging an expeditious naming of conferees, which we've now done. That was a bipartisan letter signed by the Big Four in our committee. I would now ask him, again in the spirit of bipartisanship, and I will yield him time if he's prepared to answer my question, yes or no, if he will join me in a bipartisan letter to the Speaker asking for the reinstatement of earmarks.
But
yes or no?
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, I'll yield.
No, I won't answer just yes or no. I have to be a little bit more verbose. Would you allow me additional time?
I'll grant you 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, he's yielded me 1 minute. So
Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Well, let me say, when I took over as well, first, when I took over as ranking member and we had sort of a rank way in which earmarks were done, I cleaned up the process. I think earmarks, there can be bad legislative earmarks and bad administrative earmarks. When they're done behind closed doors, they're not properly vetted, they're not transparent, and they haven't had the sunshine, antiseptic sunshine to let people know what's going on, and they're not a worthwhile project that has true support. They should be considered, whether by the administration or legislatively. And I think that we have a moratorium now, and I would like to see a different way to present those requests. And I think fundamentally under Article 1 of the Constitution, I think it's Section 2, that we should, as the House of Representatives, and we do earmark, even if we just put one line in and says that we turn all this money and responsibility over to the administration. That is an earmark, but we can do and we should do better.
Gentleman's time has expired.
I like that answer, Madam Speaker.
I appreciate the gentleman's response. Perhaps we ought to start drafting such a letter and see how far we get. But let me conclude my part of the debate here, Madam Speaker, by reiterating what my motion is. It's simple, it's pure, it's clean, it's straightforward. It instructs our conferees that we are appointing today to agree to the Senate bill. That bill, known as MAP 21, provides a total of $109 billion in funding for fiscal years 12 and 13 for federal highway, highway safety, and public transportation programs. Among its other features, it continues current funding levels, it sustains approximately 1.9 million jobs on an annual basis, it provides continued dedicated financing for public transit from the Highway Trust Fund. No more go fish with general appropriators on a yearly basis for our transit agencies. It continues and expands upon provisions developed during the last Surface Transportation Act to expedite project delivery without gutting environmental protections or limiting public participation. And I fear if you do either of the last two, you're only going to prolong the process through court battles, because there will be court challenges that will go on beyond any approval process of the bureaucracy that may exist today. The Senate bill also strengthens Buy American requirements that apply to federal highway, transit, and rail capital projects by prohibiting the segmentation of such projects in order to avoid Buy American requirements. It ensures that the Department of Transportation periodically review existing nationwide waivers applicable to highway and rail projects. It requires DOT to justify any proposed waiver of the Buy American requirements, and it ensures that the American public has notice of an opportunity to comment on any proposed waiver prior to it taking effect. And finally, MAP 21's bipartisan financing package fully pays for the bill. Fully pays for the bill. Fully pays for the bill by providing approximately $9.6 billion in new revenues into the Highway Trust Fund. This amount will fully pay for highway, transit, and highway safety programs authorized by the bill, and it will allow DOT to maintain a positive balance in both the highway and transit accounts of the Highway Trust Fund at the end of the bill. The bipartisan offsets do not add to the deficit because the general fund of the Treasurer is also made whole for every dollar that's transferred into the Highway Trust Fund. So as I conclude, let me say that for these reasons, I urge adoption of this motion. And yes, I'll yield to
Would
this,
the
Chairman.
gentleman yield for one question?
Sure.
Last week, I think it was, that you had come to the floor and asked me to sign a letter to the Speaker to appoint conferees and to go to conference. That's correct?
Correct.
And then we signed that and we sent it to the Speaker. It's gone to the Speaker. So now we're doing that, and now you're asking me to go to conference and roll over and play dead?
No, I'm not asking you to roll over and play dead. I'm saying that we ought to go to
that would be to take the Senate amendment.
Accept the Senate bill. We can come back, as I've said now for the third or fourth time, and enact a technical corrections bill. If there's something we see in there is drastically bad.
Well, I thought this motion to recommit was to accept the Senate position. So we're going to get to conference, and we're going to go to, we just had a motion to go to, didn't I pass a motion to go to conference? So now what you're asking me to just, okay, surrender. It's all over.
Reclaiming my time, Madam Chair, I've said many times during this debate that that's not the position of this gentleman, that we roll over and play dead to the other body. I've said the other body is not the perfect bill. I've said that there are technical corrections we can change once we get a conference underway. Once we pass a conference committee bill, we can come back and make technical changes. That's not unprecedented in this body. The important point here to remember is no longer can we play these political games. No longer can we add extraneous stuff on a jobs bill such as this transportation bill to score political points for a certain wing of our party. What we need to do, and the American people are demanding, this is the time that contracts are let for work. Not 90 days from now, not 180 days from now. This is springtime. This is time when the highway projects are let and the American worker is waiting to know whether he or she will have a job this summer. And that's why I think every move should be made to get the conference expeditiously, to have that conference conclude its work, and bring a bill back for both houses of Congress to enact in order to provide that certainty to the American small businesses, to the American economy, to the American worker, that he or she will have a job this summer. And that certainty should not wait around for us to decide whether we're going to roll over and play dead or not. That certainty can be, that bill can be corrected, as we've done numerous times in this body, through technical changes once we have given that certainty to the American worker and to the American people. And it's for that, excuse me, for that reason that I urge that the House today approve this motion to instruct conferees as we go to conference on the transportation bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered. And the question is on the motion offered by the gentleman from West Virginia. And those in favor will signify by saying aye. Opposed will say no. No. In the opinion of the chairs, the noes have it, the noes have it. The motion is not agreed
Speaker,
to.
I ask for the yeas and nays.
The gentleman has asked for the yeas and nays. They are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise as sufficient number having arisen. The yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House is in recess until approximately 4:45 p.m. today.